Super bedtime books to collect and keep. Storybook number 6. Norman the Naughty Gnome. Norman the Naughty Gnome. Mama, I want to say something else. Actually, it's Norman the Stubborn Boy.
Ooh, is it? Let's begin the story. Santa Claus was very busy in his workshop. It was almost Christmas and he was getting toys ready to deliver. Lots of letters had come to Santa from children saying what they would like. Now, chuckled Santa, I have some toy spiders ready. Teddy bears, dolls, a plane, and an elephant. Santa didn't make all the toys, of course. He had little gnomes who helped him. Some gnomes made the soft toys, others made the roly-poly clowns, and others painted the toys and then added fur or hair. But one gnome, Gnome, was a naughty gnome, and his name was
Norman.
He was always in trouble. One day, Santa went to collect a toy cow for a little boy's toy farm. What a shock poor Santa got. The cow was green with red stripes. Who did this? Stammered Santa.
Tee-hee-hee! Your face is funny, Santa, giggled Norman,
Hiding a wet paintbrush behind his back. Later in the workshop, the gnomes stared horrified at all the toys. Everything was mixed up. A cowboy was wearing an Indian headdress, and a doll's head almost disappeared under the guardman's bisbee.
What has happened?
Gasped the gnomes.
Tee-hee-hee! Your faces are funny, giggled Norman, the naughty gnome.
The little gnomes who had worked so hard told Santa what Norman had done.
It will take us ages to sort out the toys,
They groaned. Just then, Norman marched past Santa and the gnomes, banging loudly on a toy drum. Boom,
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 boom.
boom.
Be careful with that drum, Norman, cried Santa. But Norman went boom and the drum went bang as it burst. When the postman brought another sack of letters for Santa, the gnomes gathered round, all except Norman.
How can we make enough toys for all the girls and boys
in
time for Christmas?
Asked the gnomes. We must work harder, answered Santa. But the next day when Santa and the gnomes went into the workshop, what a sight met their eyes. All the remote control toys were zooming about and crashing into each other. Look out, cried Santa as a rocket whizzed past. Help, screeched Nigel Gnome, ducking down.
Tee-hee-hee! Your faces are funny.
Came a chuckle from a corner. It was Norman the Naughty Gnome, Gnome. Naughty, naughty, Gnome, gnome. He was pressing all the control buttons and making the toys crash.
This is great fun.
He laughed. Norman, roared Santa, and Norman ran off. Once again, the gnomes mended the toys. This time, said Santa, we will wrap the toys when they are finished.
Yes!
Agreed the gnomes.
And hide them.
Suddenly, a screech startled everyone.
Eeks!
This doll gave me a fright, cried Neil Gnome. Just look at her.
Tee-hee-hee! Your face wasn't funny, Neil.
Grinned Norman and ran off. Santa and the gnomes decided that something must be done about Norman. But what? How could they teach him a lesson? At last,
They had a plan.
that night, when Norman the naughty gnome was fast asleep in bed, Santa and the gnomes crept towards him. Each of them carried a little box of face paints, and the gnomes tried hard not to giggle. "Hush!" whispered Santa. "Don't waken him." The gnomes set to work. Next morning, the little gnomes waited eagerly for Norman to look into the mirror.
Help!
He cried.
What's happened?
Laughed the gnomes.
Your face is funny, Norman.
Now Norman knew how it felt to be laughed at. He scrubbed his face over and over again, and the gnomes laughed and laughed until all the paint was washed off. When Santa asked if Norman had learned his lesson, Norman said that he had. After that, Norman began to behave, and soon he was
Santa's best helper.
The Christmas toys were ready in time, and Norman was so good that Santa asked him to ride on his sleigh on Christmas Eve. Now, Norman the naughty gnome was a very special gnome.
The end.
A tick-tock book. This story is dedicated to our cute little gnome of the family, Danu Disha, who was Santa's assistant for fancy dress when he was in lower kindergarten.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Mother Mary. Thank you, Saint Joseph.